Today, most people see death as an end to human suffering. But in old Egypt, things were different. Death wasn't seen as an end to suffering. People believed that there was a life beyond death where the real agony starts, and you have to overcome all the obstacles in your way to finally meet the god of death, Osiris, who resides in his realm. There were two ways to reach Osiris's realm, sea or land. But navigating the path wasn't easy, so the dead had to use a book known as the Book of Two Ways that helped them with the challenges on the way. And guess what has happened? A copy of the guidebook, which is almost 4,000 years old, was found by archaeologists recently, and this is undoubtedly the oldest archive of the book found to date. So what is written in the book? Hello, and welcome back to the Abandoned Archaeologist again, the channel to learn all about ancient archaeological findings. Today we will discuss the discovery of an ancient book that reveals a terrifying message. But before we begin, to get your attention, we have a question you can answer at the end of the video. What is the Book of Two Ways about? Write down your answer in the comment section and see if you got it right. Here we begin. Death was not a merciful enough end to one's troubles in ancient Egypt. The afterlife was also dangerous, and the dead had to overcome a spiritual obstacle course to reach Rosto, the glorious realm of Osiris, the god of death. There were at least two ways to get to Rosto, one by land and one by sea. Both were difficult enough to necessitate using a guidebook, the aptly named Book of Two Ways. This detailed map of the ancient Egyptian underworld could be the first illustrated book in history. Archaeologists have discovered a 4,000-year-old copy, possibly the oldest version ever discovered, according to Franz Litz of the New York Times. The discovery, described in a recent paper in the Journal of Egyptian Archaeology, pushes the history of ancient literature back in time, highlighting the dedication and sophistication with which these people confronted the enigma of their own mortality. The newest, technically oldest, copy of Book of Two Ways is one of only 24 known to modern archaeologists. According to Colin Barras of New Scientist, it beats the previous record by about 40 years. The text was discovered in 2012 during the excavation of a burial site in the Egyptian village of Deir el-Barsh or Deir el-Barsha, in a coffin that had largely escaped both grave robbers and previous generations of archaeologists. Unlike modern bound books, the ancient text was not a standalone volume. Instead, excerpts were written inside the sarcophagus, and two rotting cedar panels etched with images and hieroglyphs have survived. The inscriptions clearly quote the Book of Two Ways and other artifacts in the grave that have been dated to Pharaoh MENTUHOTEP II's reign, which lasted until 2010 BC. Such coffin texts, easily accessible to the entombed, were intended to situate the deceased in the world of the gods, according to study author Harco Willems, an Egyptologist at the University of Leuven in Belgium. This sarcophagus housed a high-status woman named Ankh, though the afterlife instructions in her final resting place refer to her as he. Rebirth was most closely associated with male gods in ancient Egypt, so dead women had to adopt the pronoun he to be more like Osiris himself. According to Kara Cooney, an expert on Egyptian art and architecture at the University of California, Los Angeles. On the other hand, Ankh's Book of Two Ways revealed some hints of personalization. The text hinted that her journey might have been derailed early on by a ring of fire. She may have later dealt with demons, spirits, and even earthly calamities like fire. The only defense against these calamities was spells cast by the deceased Ankh herself. Unfortunately, the companion text included detailed instructions for these incantations. This book's and others' maps are muddled with meandering lines and ominous figures, symbols that are difficult to interpret in modern times. Some researchers believe the depictions were inspired by images from life rather than death, evoking rituals meant to resurrect deceased gods or humans. In either case, the texts represented rebirth in this world or another. As a result, excerpts from the Book of Two Ways are commonplace in Egyptian tombs. But according to Barris, this oldest copy may already have a rival, a leather scroll version discovered by Egyptologist Wael Sherbini, who has yet to publish his findings. Whatever is revealed next, archaeologists will undoubtedly want to look, so there's doubt about it. Book of Two Ways. The Book of Two Ways is the most detailed graphical composition of the coffin texts. This collection, also known as the Guide to the Ways of Rosto, was discovered on a few coffins from the Middle Egyptian necropolis of Deir el-Barsha and is the oldest example of a netherworld map. It foreshadows later netherworld books like the Amduat and the Book of Gates. Images of the sky goddess Nut or the sky itself are frequently painted on the inside of the lid of Deir el-Barsha coffins, and the Book of Two Ways is painted on the floor. This appears to emphasize what Robinson has described as a sky-oriented sub-theme, which may be reminiscent of Nut elements. Unlike the later netherworld books, the book begins at sunrise on the eastern horizon, with much of the journey taking place in the sky. The two ways are two paths zigzag across a dangerous landscape filled with obstacles and demonic entities towards Rosto, Osiris's realm. Rosto, which is said to be at the sky's edge, is imprisoned in darkness and surrounded by fire. Here is Osiris's body, and anyone who looks at it will never die. The deceased also wishes to reach the field of offerings, where they will feast with Osiris and have all of their needs met. Unfortunately, the road is hazardous, many paths intersect, and some lead nowhere. The lake of fire, which can destroy but also revive, separates the two paths. The deceased must contend with the fiery court that surrounds the sun, as well as numerous guardians and demons, and their path is blocked by darkness, high stone walls, and firewalls. Some versions depict a mansion with numerous rooms, filled with monstrous creatures. The Book of Two Ways texts may have originated elsewhere, but the graphical element is unique to the region and was only used for a few generations. Only one instance of the composition has been discovered outside of Bersha in the tomb of Kesu, the elder at Kom el Hisn, Western Delta. There had been no other attempt to map the netherworld at the time, and none of the subsequent netherworld books come close to the detailed depiction of the afterlife. Later texts divide the afterlife into hours, caves, and vignettes depicting specific landmarks or events. The Book of Two Ways is a guidebook. Lesko classified the Book of Two Ways into three categories: A, B, and C. Type A and B are the longer versions of the text and differ only in a few textual elements. Type C, the shorter version, was thought by Lesko to be the older form, but some have questioned this attribution. The longer version shows signs of being derived from Hermopolis, including frequent references to Thoth. Journey through the netherworld. In the shorter text, the journey begins at the mansion of the Many-Faced, a palace or primeval shrine with high walls of darkness or flame. I am a builder with knowledge. The deceased says, I am a builder and raised my father. They also claim to be the lord of the secret things. The texts describe geographical features like towns and fields, and the detailed versions include images of guardians or demons wielding knives and staves. What do you think of this ancient book discovered? Comment your views. And the answer to the question is, the book is a graphical composition of coffin texts. Please do subscribe for more.